And welcome back to the Part-Time Otaku Podcast. My name is Grant.
My name is Dave.
If this is your first time listening, this is a anime-only podcast. No worries about any manga spoilers here. So let's just get right into the shout-out this week. So we want to shout out Steven or Stefan Gian on Instagram for the shout-out thumbnail. I apologize. There's way too many ways to say one spelling of a word, but so it's like I said, it's either Steven or Stefan Gian. Awesome stuff. Thank you very much for letting us use the thumbnail this week.
Killer artwork, my homie.
Yeah, it's every week it blows my mind. It just makes me want to sit down and try and draw something, and even if it's just like a chair, just like I want to feel like I'm contributing to something.
I've definitely done that, like tried drawing like just some fun fan art since we've started our podcast journey, and it was so incredibly discouraging after seeing like we've featured such amazing artwork over the last 8 or 9 months, and then I just got like these chicken scratch unrecognizable stick figures, and I was like, yeah, I think I'm just gonna. This is not something like a new project for me to start right now.
Yeah, I'm just gonna vicariously live through the art skills of others. Yeah. But anyway, so thank you again for the thumbnail, everyone each week. So we'll jump right into the synopsis. The League of Villains waits for Gigantomachia to wake up as they clash with the Meta Liberation Army.
Interesting episode.
Great episode, I think.
Yeah. It's I would say it's in the top 3 of the season, and don't ask me what the other 2 are. I don't have that prepared, but I just mean it's on the upper tier, I think, of what we've seen. Is that fair to say?
100% fair to say. And it's funny you bring that up, because I was thinking, just with the ups and downs of this season, I think once this is all done, it might actually be worth sitting down and really going through the top 3 of the season and why. Not even that's the one thing I think in this season. There's no one perfect episode by any means, so it kind of makes it interesting as a thought experiment to break down what has worked and what hasn't, and what has come above the others. But again, to your point, this is definitely up there. Like any episode this season, there's some things that work and some things that don't work. All in all, very very good.
To your point, I almost wonder if down the line, because I'm sure there'll be a significant break between this season and the next season. I almost wonder what it would be like binge watching season 5, and if it would make some of the rougher stuff a little bit more palatable, because it's very easy to forget that we had 13 or so straight weeks of class battles.
That is true.
With little to no exciting stuff. The fights in that were fun, but the main plot was it pretty much in stasis that whole time, and maybe that would be funner if you were binging it. I don't know.
I feel like there would be a significant benefit to an immediate follow-up at the end of each episode, because it's definitely set its, you could say that about a lot of mediums of TV, but I feel like this season there was a lot of we had 70% of the episode, and the last 30% was kind of the beginning of what happens in the next episode, especially in specifically the class battles arc. So it was kind of each episode was purposely teased.
Yeah.
Here's a little bit of what you get. You get something, not just a 20-second ending, and then we got to wait a whole week. It's they would show us the whole thing, and they kind of do that again. Funny enough, with this current arc we're going through. Yeah,
they do the recap,
But even they kind of set up what's going to happen next episode. We kind of get a little taste of that, So it's, but yeah, let's get right down to the plot.
Yeah. So this episode opens up giving some history that I think we were missing, or maybe some context to this Redestro guy. There's this opening narration, basically explaining who Destro was, the origin of this villain that we've never met. He's this guy that more or less wanted the same thing that Redestro does, and the Meta Liberation Army does, which is he wants everybody to be able to use their quirks without any kind of limitations, and just generally speaking, society should be geared in that way. And then he went up against the government and lost and died. I think they say he actually committed suicide. Is that right?
No, I think he said that he was defeated, and then in prison he kind of writes his.
Oh yes.
What's the word for it? The
manifesto.
The manifesto.
Yeah. That book.
Yeah, he wrote his manifesto, and then he does kill himself.
Yeah.
But,
And then he had a son, but he was unaware of that son, and then we more or less assume it's Redestro. Right?
yeah, cue Redestro.
And then yeah.
It was perfectly hammy, which I kind of liked. It was very villainy of he had a son that he didn't know. You could almost feel like if in the dub version, like just the voiceover they would have used would have been fun to listen to. But
and then they literally put Redestro on screen. They're like, we bet the audience will put this one together.
Like I said, this whole arc is like, it's nothing new. Like My Hero does the humor, and we've been over that 100 times. But it's just funny to see like a new group of like adult-ish characters, and like hamming it up the villain wise. I don't know. It's kind of fun. Like as dark as like these episodes have been and are going to be, they're kind of hammy, which it's kind of a nice change of scenery. You know what I mean?
Totally. We go to, is it Deku? I spelt it wrong. Daika City. And the League of Villains is chilling there, waiting. They're running out the clock at this point because they're waiting for Gigantomachia to literally wake up in like an hour 40. Because the refresher from last week is their plan here is to like just lure him there because he's going to chase Shigaraki, and they will use him to defeat or clash with the Meta Liberation Army. So that's their plan, but it doesn't really work because Slide and Go, our homie, shows up.
Goofy looking character.
Dude, it's so My Hero of this like undercover agent with like this kind of like dark, sinister plan to have this goofy, dumbass smile on his face.
I love it.
Dude, and did you see him sliding and going? No, because they're like, he's leading them there, and I'm like, he's sliding because for a second I was like, what's this guy's he's sliding. I see.
Sliding go.
He's I see now. He's sliding up the road. The rest of them are walking, and he's just sliding.
Like he's never not put a smile on my face.
I know.
On the screen, it's so simple and so silly, but it's oddly perfect.
There's something so silly about it because when you think double agent or undercover, I know who I think of. I think of like Hawks.
Yeah.
Like cool, cunning, sly.
The obvious choice.
Actor. He's got all these utilities in his utility belt, and he's able to employ all these skills and infiltrate, the League of Villains on behalf of the heroes. You don't think of like Slide and Go, the goofy looking fella sliding and going around town with with ulterior motives. But anyway, I digress. He leads them into the Deika City, and it becomes immediately clear that they are completely surrounded. And I think they actually say like 90% of the residents of this area. Is it the neighborhood, or is it the entire city?
I think it's the city. So the interesting thing about this they kind of lead into it in the beginning of the episode is like I think Shoto even points, or one of the League of Villains members points out that so we're walking into a place with 110,000 people, and it's like. But I feel like the number that's been used is like 116. So I'm really hoping, this is kind of jumping ahead a little bit, maybe in future episodes, but I really hope like Gigantomachia shows up. He's going to wipe out all 110,000. And then the rest of the heroes across Japan have to defeat like the remaining 5,000 league. I think that's what they're kind of directing towards, like making it manageable. That's how they're gonna neatly clean this up by the end, I think.
Okay, so yes, I think that all sounds very logical and very My Hero Academia. It just seems like such an arbitrary number. Like
it's just like a made up number.
I understand like the mechanics of like, let's give insurmountable odds and then immediately even those odds using the plot device of like Gigantomachia. Like 100,000 is fucking preposterous. Like why not
a lot of people?
Why not 1,000? Like you know what I mean? Like it like the math just sort of like falls apart. It's very weird, but like maybe that is how this goes. As they realize that they're outnumbered, there's a splash screen like the one that always introduces the episode. But did you notice that it says My Villain Academia?
I think it did that last week as well.
I think so. I think like when they kicked off this arc, the kickoff of the the actual episode name was My Villain Academia. Now, obviously, I think this one was called like Revival or something.
Oh yes, that was a cool splash screen. Yes.
But it still says My Villain Academia in there, which is pretty neat. Just because like we're still following the League of Villains, I don't know. I thought it was cool. I think there is some small irony that my favorite episodes of My Hero Academia this season have been about My Villain Academia.
I was just gonna say I could have used like 10 more of these prior, like leading up to this.
100%. What happens from
But then
here?
it kicks off. So we get the splash screen, and honestly, really cool cut to like the revival, the whole revival thing, and all the liberation members kind of like just jump, attack the League of Villains. Really cool. Kind of just like that still shot of everyone's like quirks or metas. That's the other thing too in this episode. Anytime one of the liberation members are talking and it cuts to their ability screen, it doesn't say quirk, it says meta ability.
Oh, that's true.
And I'm like,
because they refer to it
really
that way.
matter? It shows that like they do discern themselves from differently from
They
like the rest of
do.
society. So I thought that was kind of like a cool little Easter egg. Not that I don't think it has any major connotation going forward. I think it's just
a neat detail
themselves. But yeah, exactly. It's kind of like the My Villain Academia stuff. It's just the little things they're kind of peppering in. Yeah. So
as they're getting attacked, there's this quick cut to Jiran, the guy that they have hostage, or that Redestro has hostage, and he's saying like, you really don't want to cross the League of Villains, but then Redestro goes on this whole villain monologue talking about how he's not concerned because of these 3 reasons, and I won't go over all of them, but he more or less says when all for one left, it seems like their production and use of Nomus plummeted. And he's basically saying you either don't have enough, or the ones you do have you don't want to use. And then he says a League of Villains that can't use Nomus is no more than a club.
Yeah, that's dumb. Like, that was kind of his. I thought that was interesting because it's opposite. Like kind of a bit of a role reversal, because last episode Shigaraki was kind of like, oh, like your little revolution, and we now know him as Redestro, but he got all worked up about like, no, like this isn't just a revolution, it's this, that, and da-da-da. It was just kind of just monologuing, and now him pointing the finger at the league, calling them no more than a club. I thought it was kind of just a cool throwaway line, like
totally.
a good villain line, and considering what we had just seen. But it's also too they do a really quick job of placing in time where we are, saying how the Endeavor and Hawks fight with the intelligent Nomu had just happened.
Oh,
like
right.
obviously Dobby's back, he's with the group here in Daika City, so we're kind of catching up to like where we are in like the class timeline.
Yeah, we're getting closer to present day here.
Yeah, not like obviously we're not quite, because we've seen like post Daika City and all that, but things are starting to line up, which is kind of nice to see.
Yeah, maybe I wonder if we'll only catch up to present day by end of season. I guess we'll have to see what kind of pace they set.
I wonder. Yeah.
This next segment of the episode, I want to say like this next third. It's almost like the entire middle of this episode is pretty Toga centric.
It's funny because that's what we said we were looking for.
Yeah, did we say that last week?
Last week both of us said we're well overdue for a Toga episode, some backstory and whatnot.
That's true. We did say that, and if this is anybody's first time listening, we've also echoed the sentiment a million times, where I think we have consistently agreed one of the best things about My Hero Academia is their ability to both shelf characters and also just like pull them off the shelf at any given time and be like, okay, now it's a Toga episode. I think the easiest example of how good My Hero Academia is at this is the Red Riot episode. We've brought it up a million times before, but they can just take a character that's like had a lot of like secondary or tertiary moments and then be like, okay, you're the main character for the next 20 minutes, and it always works. And this is no exception. This worked for me. As like Toga's whole storyline this episode, I really enjoyed.
Absolutely creepy. Like when she reveals her true face, I was like, because that's the thing. I feel like I've been seeing for years. I've been seeing Toga key art, or like fan art and stuff like that. And I know she's always been a creepy character, but there's always this one reoccurring face you see. And I was like, oh, maybe that's just, people's, maybe one person did it, people are copying it, and like it's just being reproduced over time. It's clearly from the source material. I should have known.
Totally.
Because it's pulled from every freaking fan art I've seen. Like, it is fucking creepy.
Yeah.
Well,
the girl she goes up against is called, I think her hero or meta name, whatever you want, her quirk name. She's called Curious.
Yeah.
And she's like a reporter. She was a reporter, and she has a quirk that is exploding landmines. She can turn things into landmines. Anything she touches. So it's an intense explosive quirk. And this whole segment of the episode is pretty much her literally interrogating Toga in like a mock interview while she just beats on her.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense, man. Toga, there's like some really cool moments in here. At one point she uses like the support item to steal blood from like multiple of her attackers at once, because one theme throughout all of these action scenes is the League of Villains is completely outnumbered, right? They've all got like a dozen people on them apiece. So she uses this item and it like, injects, it's like these, I don't know what you would call it, like
almost looks like
like deployable syringes that have like cords feeding back to it.
Yeah, exactly it.
So she does that, she gets a hit, but then it was sort of a trap, because as soon as she gets the blood in her, and she's using this, by the way, because I needed a bit of a reminder of what her quirk was, because it's been so long since we've seen her use it. We knew that she's had the ability to get someone's blood, ingest it, and then she turns into them. She turns into their appearance. So it was clear that she was trying to do that in order probably to escape, right? To turn into
disguise herself as one of them, yeah.
Yeah, but then that backfires because it seems like the blood or these people had been turned into, quote, minds already by Curious's quirk.
Fucking heretics. Or zealots. These guys, they're like drinking the Liberation Kool-Aid for sure.
Big time. Sorry, that was my cat. But yeah, so she explodes them. She detonates them and then continues to just detonate the blood inside of Toga. I gotta say, I was disturbed by this whole thing. I was like, I have something in the notes here being like, it's a weird feeling to feel bad for like an anti-hero or for like the villain. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't even she's not an anti-hero. She's a villain.
Yeah.
I would say flat out. But it was weird because I'm not conflicted about this, because I feel like the Toga stuff, in my opinion, should have just been slowed down a little bit. Like, I know it was like this whole encounter, the whole episode is designed to be, they were caught off guard, they're being attacked relentlessly, they're on their toes. Like, I understand why it's sped, or it's at the speed that it's at.
Yeah.
But I feel like that exploding moment happened way too fast. It was immediately on to the next thing, and before we could even like kind of come to terms with, she she made like a human bomb. It's on to the next thing, like it's just. I feel like if that moment would have settled a little more, it would have been kind of like, oh fuck, like these are the people we're dealing with. But yeah, so that's the whole thing. The whole Toga thing. It's the speed, like the momentum of the scenes are so fucking fast. I just would have liked a little more time to digest, But then you go to other points where it's meant to be fast, and it's whipping around and da-da-da, and it's like, oh, this is good. This is like the breakneck speed we want for a moment like this. So it's, it's like you can't have it either way. It's just, but it's at a constant like breakneck speed the entire time.
I know what you mean. It's like the show needs to give you moments to breathe, and it needs to give you moments to like digest what it's showing you.
But in the moment, it can't.
It's like, no, we like they just sort of decided this is going to just be an incredibly like breakneck, fast-paced episode because we want you to feel desperation.
It was anxious watching it, honestly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I feel like that, they were probably going for something along those lines, right? Of being overwhelmed, like the League of Villains is being overwhelmed. Because every time you cut somewhere else, the League is losing. And we're rooting for them for whatever reason, right? There is this somewhat of a slow pace. I'm curious if this worked for you. They do sort of slow the pace because they do this flashback of a newscast after, Toga has her like jokery smile moment. We cut to a flashback of a newscast of someone saying that she vanished after she attacked a classmate. And then a student's being interviewed from said newscast, and it flashes to her drinking someone's blood with a straw while she cries.
It was funny, like Leanna and I were rewatching it today, and I was like, fuck, like I don't think My Hero has ever used this much blood before.
I thought about that because there's more blood later. They leaned into. I'm really curious about what this is like in the manga. And actually, you sent me this thing about animation that we should mention later. But I totally agree with you. I have not seen this much blood, and they really leaned into the fact that the League kills people. In this episode, like there are deaths plural and blood, like lots of blood,
lots of blood.
And this moment of like, it was like a close up too, like just drinking blood through a straw. Yuck.
I really like the effects they use when the whole I guess part of the monologue or the backstory of like where Toga has the mask on. And how like she first like grew the mask and kind of like learned to hide herself in society. I thought the animation on that was stunning. Like just like the reds and the blacks, like obviously using the theme of blood. It's a huge theme in this episode, obviously, specifically with Toga because it's like all revolved around her quirk. But yeah, just like the like the forming of the mask and the shattering of the mask and like even just the scenes of like her as a kid, because they get into this whole thing about what is a normal life and all that.
Yeah.
And because there's kind of like this the one thing that didn't work in the scene is the character Curious kind of comparing the League of Villains views versus like the Liberation Army's views of like what is normal kind of thing. And they're kind of like counterpointing almost at some point, and it's like I just leave this shit out, like just this is meant for the Destro stuff. I understand it's why it's there, but like that didn't work. But just showing her backstory, how fucking terrifying it was as like a young Toga with the bird. She's like licking the bird, and then she finally goes to eat it, and her parents like clearly like screaming at her. It was pretty unsettling stuff, and it completely knocked it out of the park. Like one of the best villain backstories I've seen by far.
I agree that it all worked. I agree with you too that the forcing the like ideological differences between the two groups in the middle of the fight was kind of unnecessary. We should have probably just stuck on the whole Toga thread because like I agree with you, that worked really, really, really well,
and it still would have got the message across.
Like I think that there's a brief I think the audience probably already has a cursory understanding of why these two groups don't get along. And at a certain point it often doesn't matter because we're already at blows, you know what I mean? And I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to have like a I don't like you and here's why conversation. I'm sure like as we get closer to Redestro and so on and so forth. So I'm sure there's plenty of that coming. There's no need to kind of ham-fist it in this scene. But it wasn't too bad that it ruined it for me or anything like that. It does continue to get more and more desperate for Toga. She pulls a knife, like she kind of draws Curious in, and Curious is like, I would say like that scene wasn't like fun to watch, like because she's sort of leaning over Toga, who's been blown to bits at this point, and then Toga pulls a knife. I'm like, oh, she's gonna get her, and then nope, like she just gets blasted in the face again.
Also, really cool tease of Redestro's quirk because
what did I miss?
Well, she makes a reference to, might not be, I'm blanking on the name, but essentially it's a named something ring. So I think that's like a support item or a quirk that like gave her that item essentially.
Oh, like what she uses to blast away Toga? Yeah. This thing that like she magically sort of appears. Yeah.
That's someone's name, is it not?
I have no idea.
In the League, I feel like I've seen that name in the episodes recently. So
interesting. Okay, I was like, oh, is this a weird manifestation of her quirk? But you think it's a tie-in to?
I think it's like someone making a support item for them within the League or one of the members, or if it's someone's quirk that gives them that, like kind of like Momo.
Okay, interesting.
So that was like a quick, because like there's clearly a name on the front of it when she says it. It's almost like she's using like a. Like I choose you, Pikachu. I don't know. It kind of made me laugh when she did it. but yeah, so
Destructo Desk.
yeah, like just screaming out your abilities, the typical My Hero fashion. She's acting like a hero in that moment. But yeah, so Toga eats shit.
She eats shit. And then it goes away. I didn't expect it to. She drinks some blood, and I'm like, what's she gonna turn into, Midoriya? Like,
I had this spoiled from me by Twitter.
So of course,
The split face.
What a bummer, man.
Yeah, I knew it was coming, but I was like, fuck. Like, so on the Friday night too, man. The episode wasn't even out yet.
That's a dick move.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's Yuraka Okacho or whatever, and
nailed it.
I was like, at first I was like, okay, but it doesn't matter because she's still. There's a shot of her as Okacho just getting hit over the head with a pole, like a straight up pole. I was like, oh my god, this is awful. Yeah. That was just like watching one of the main characters get beat to death. This isn't fun at all. But she gets a power up in this moment because she apparently could not do this before, and I'm glad that they like beat the audience over the head with this because like it's been so long since we've seen her use her quirk that it would not be surprising if people forgot. But apparently she could only steal appearances, not actual quirks. But in this moment, she's able to nimbly maneuver around everybody and use Okacho's quirk to make them all float into the air. And she gets like a solid dozen of them, including Curious. She gets like the henchmen that were beating her ass.
Well, she gets Curious first initially, gets her up in the air, and then it kind of cuts into, which I thought was a really cool monologue by her of like, I'm always running. I'm running from heroes. I'm running from the police. Just I gotta keep running. And then it's literally like this dripping of Sakuga of her like zigzagging and running, as she's saying this, like tapping people and rising them up, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah. Then she does the hand together thing, which makes them all fall, and this is like no holds barred. She killed all those people. Like there's blood in the background. It's brief, but there's blood everywhere in the background. She killed, all of those people.
It looked like someone like doing a cannonball into a pool.
Yeah,
it's just all the water goes up. It was pretty bloody.
Maybe we could touch on this very briefly. I believe this is the scene. This is also the scene where she has like the half face that spoiled you.
Oh, yeah.
But this is also the scene that went big on Twitter and on the subreddit about it having animation issues.
Which I don't completely understand the argument.
So, without seeing that post, I thought the animation here was good. I thought, like you said, it was like a fun Sakuga moment, and it was cool.
Yeah.
Like full stop, period. My understanding of what leaked and the animator that like apologized and asked not to be credited, and like the actual samples that were leaked online, is that like it was meant to be significantly better, and then the deadline loomed, and they had to just do a lower rent version of what they had planned.
Okay, because I did read this was like they were working on this like right up until the premiere, which is crazy.
Yeah, that is pretty intense. I thought it's a shame because it's still an above average scene. It's still good. It's just like I guess this particular animator was upset that he didn't get to do it the way he originally wanted, which apparently would have been even better. Mm-hmm. You know what actually happened? The exact same thing happened with leaked specs and everything. For an episode or two ago, the scene of Shigaraki being shocked by the doctor while he's hooked up to all those cables.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently that was supposed to be quite bloody and much more intense. It is in the manga I saw, and even the anime adaptation was supposed to be. I mean, if you look at that scene, it's pretty much like a still of him yelling, but his body isn't moving.
Sure.
Like, it's just the lighting going off and on. Mm-hmm. It was supposed to be him, like, convulsing and, like, supposed to be quite dark. And apparently, similar deal, they couldn't do it in time, so they went with, like, a lower rent version.
Well,
but it's funny.
It looks phenomenal. I
was about to say, both of those things I wasn't sitting there mad about, right? No. Like, we're only talking about them because, like, the stuff leaked.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, I guess you wanted to do that better. This is a different problem that other shows have had. Like, other shows, like, you look at it and you're like, oh, this animation was bad this episode. objectively, and then like a lot of people agree, and then sometimes it gets taken out of control or out of proportion. For me, in these instances, the animation was fine, better than average a lot of the time. But yeah,
all I can think about now is I think back to our Blu-ray conversation we had a couple of weeks ago on the post show.
I saw someone saying hopefully they can do it better in the Blu-ray.
Yeah, so I wonder, like, that would be interesting to get our hands on, at least to see like a Blu-ray version. Whether that's the thing too, if you buy a season digitally, is it not necessarily Blu-ray quality, but is it like up to date visuals that would be also on the Blu-ray?
Man, that is a really good question, and if any of our listeners know the answer, let us know. If you buy a copy of anime on God, I don't know, iTunes, or if you buy a hard, a digital copy, does it have updated visuals like the Blu-rays do, or do they reserve that only for the Blu-ray hard copy releases? Because those are the expensive ones, especially.
Yes, big time.
They make a lot of money on Blu-rays.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the ending of this episode. This is when so Toga escapes. She kills all those people. It's bloody.
Power upgrade. Yeah.
She gets a power upgrade
at the minimum rank, as if the doctor said last episode.
Yes, that's true. We cut to the rest of the league. They're all also struggling with enemies. Toga has escaped to like a closet where she collapses. And Tomura is exhausted. We have to also remember he's been fighting Gigantomachia for a literal month or something.
Almost 2 months. 3 hours of sleep a day, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so he's exhausted and like suffering from like just genuine exhaustion, and is like semi hallucinating and all that. He has flashbacks to the previous holder of One for All, or no, yes, One for All. All Might's mentor, holding him as a kid, and that's his grandmother, but he doesn't know that. There's a kid calling him Tenko in this flashback, so I think we can say with some reliability now, or probably certainty, that his real name is probably Tenko and not Tomura. He just doesn't know that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this coming, like more of this.
Yeah,
I want the true story of Shigaraki. I feel like we're years away from that, but this is a good little. This is a here's something. We'll fucking see you later. That's what this is.
Yeah, I'd love more by the end of the season, but we're gonna have to see, man. I'm very interested. He's being pursued by a solid dozen people, and he's talking about how, he's thinking about it, and he touched on this theme like last week when he was talking to the doctor about like when he puts the hands of his family on him and he thinks about that stuff, he feels sick and he feels like rage. And then this whole crowd is attacking him and he disintegrates the whole crowd.
I love the move, like climbs the wall, kicks off the wall, and just boom, drops them all.
But he disintegrates people he didn't touch directly.
Yeah. Yes.
Instantly, and they all just fall to pieces. And so Dobby notices this, and or the other guy does too. I forget his name. The guy that can turn people into little marbles.
Oh yes.
But he goes, "Oh, that's also an upgrade." So that is a formidable quirk. If like maybe it's like a chain lightning, but like a chain disintegration, like if they're all touching or something.
That's so gnarly. I wonder if that's like. I wonder if they're really setting home that these are only moves they can use at like the absolute peak of their exhaustion. You know, kind of like how like
Red Riot's unbreakable form.
Yeah, or like even like Deku or even All Might, like they really got to dig deep to find that last bit of warmth in their body to like unleash. Like United States a smash or whatever. Like it's Also, I don't want to skip over the past. Like the actual animation of his hallucination was stunning. It was really, really well done. Like probably like the whole Toga stuff looked great, but this was like whoa. It was eye candy to say the least. It was tremendous looking.
I thought it was great too. This last piece feels almost forced in. Like they ran out of time, but Dobby gets a fight going.
This is what I was talking about. This is like the beginning of the class battles. Like the round would end, they would start the beginning of the next round.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And then it would like we pick up from that point in the next episode. That's exactly what this and the Twice stuff feels like.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah. So it's like they're preemptively like starting an arc so they can just like hit the ground running next week.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't know if you want to call it an arc, but you know what I mean. Yeah. Okay. So Dobby starts this fight with this ice guy who doesn't make ice; he controls it. and he like does some pretty cool nifty shit where he like turns the ice into like fists and dragons, and the animation obviously between him and this guy is pretty neat because, you know, ice and blue fire. It's neat, and anytime Dobby is on screen, it's usually pretty cool. Twice finds Toga. He's freaking out about the whole thing because she seems to be really, really close to death. And they have a bit of a special bond. And then this is the episode ends on kind of a weird moment here. I was kind of confused by this. Maybe you can help me clearly understand this. Who attacks Twice? Are they puppets of what look like him? Is this what we learn?
I think...
Are they literal copies of him? Because that happened to him.
Well, no. So the dude, I don't know the guy's name, but I think his quirk is essentially like he can anthropomorphize. I mean, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, anthropomorphize.
Yeah, it's a mouthful. I think it's probably just like I'm wondering if they're gonna like cut to like a comedy bit next episode where it's like literally like garden furniture, and Twice is just so twacked out of his fucking mind on his like, you know, just his mental instability that he's projecting his anger on himself, and he's seeing these things.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking they're doing, or it could just be like maybe they can modify the shape of stuff or whatever. But
interesting.
I'm ready. I am so ready for Twice to throw down. But they also make a point of like how important he is.
He's still
to the cause.
He's one of the best characters. He's great.
100%. But like, so the way they tease that is like, oh, they're gonna like snatch him up in a second. We're gonna, you know, episode's gonna wake up to Toga kind of coming awake and no one is around her kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's what they're gonna do, and then we're not gonna hear about Twice for like another season or something. So I don't know.
I like having him around.
I do too. I am starting to get the feeling that I don't think this season is gonna wrap up neatly, and we're gonna be dealing with the Liberation Army for like a while.
We're gonna get some kind of big cliffhanger.
I think so.
That leaves this arc pretty incomplete, and then that'll be most of season 6.
But in saying that, I'm not disappointed with that, because I think that's like a really good stepping stone and a little more confidence going into the next season, considering what we've kind of been dealing with. But all in all, fucking what a good episode.
Great episode, man.
Yeah.
I really, really enjoyed this one. So I think that about does it, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Man, thank you guys so much for listening. We do My Hero Academia every week, and then 2 days later we drop the post show, which we're going to hit record on very shortly. If you haven't listened to that, it's a much more chilled out podcast where we talk about pretty much everything else that we're watching. So, you know, we cover like week to week Tokyo Revengers, To Your Eternity, which just had its finale. We're both watching this new anime called Sunny Boy. You know, like there's some MCU news and anime news. So all of that stuff we cover in the post show. Usually drops on Fridays. So take a listen to that if you haven't already. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, follow, you know, support the podcast on whatever social media platform that you feel is appropriate for you. Thank you guys so much for listening. We will see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.